All right, so I want to welcome you guys to yet another episode of FDL Presents the Zach Rocheleau podcast, and we are near Atlanta, Georgia. We are near Atlanta, Georgia. Actually, it's Alpharetta.
Alpharetta is correct.
Alpharetta, Georgia, and we are here with my friend Noah Ohlsen. He is a, what is it, four-time?
Yes, sir. About to be 5, hopefully.
Wow. About to be 5-time games athlete, and it's an extreme pleasure because I've been following Noah for the past 4 years since he made it to the games the first time, and it's been amazing to see his evolution in not only, becoming a better athlete, but his preparation and how serious this has become because CrossFit has evolved, the competition has evolved, and the challenge to evolve is just growing and growing and growing. And so I want to welcome Noah on the podcast, and I want to say thank you for having us. We're actually in his home filming this interview, so I want to thank him for that.
Nice and cozy. My pleasure. Thank you guys for coming to hang out. Same deal. Been following you for a little while here, and excited that we finally got to link up.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I want to, with this podcast today is, Noah's actually, it's really, really cool because he's trying to optimize every single thing in preparation for the games, and he's actually getting back into tracking macros and making sure he's optimizing his performance before the game. So I want to preface that we're going to talk about this later on in the podcast, but how I like to lead the show off with is kind of like a lot of people watching this are not big into the CrossFit world, and they'll probably have already been following you because I'm gonna post about you now, and then they'll be following you after that. Yeah, so thanks for the follow. But if they've never been to your Instagram page before, because we live in a world where we don't have business cards, we have an Instagram feed.
Yeah.
And that kind of is a highlight tape of what we do.
Yep.
And so if they were to stumble across your Instagram page, what would they see? What would it show that Noah is about?
So I would say primarily it's a kind of a feature of my career as a CrossFit Games athlete. I try to keep my page as balanced as I try to keep my life as well, and make sure that not everything is in the gym. You know, I have a beautiful girlfriend, a beautiful dog, and we try to spend time doing regular, normal people things outside of the gym as much as possible, definitely on the weekends and on my rest days a few times throughout the week. But if you don't know exactly what CrossFit is, it's kind of a combination of Olympic lifting, powerlifting, gymnastics, some aerobic conditioning, so just basically everything fitness related combined into one, and we do it as fast and heavy as possible, which I know can be pretty intimidating to people at times, but yeah, that's kind of what you would see in there, is a mix of all that stuff going on at once.
Absolutely. So, and he's the top of the top, which is really, really cool, and I'm excited to see him go into his 5th game season. So when you're hearing him talk about all these different domains of training that you're actually doing for time or you're doing for maximal weight, so much preparation has gone into this. So from 99.9% of the population, they're not going to be games level athletes, and they will not be training that way. And I see Noah in the gym, like you might see him do a 10-minute workout, or you might be watching the CrossFit Games for the first time and you see them do a 10-minute workout. There's probably an hour worth of preparation before that to get their bodies ready. So most people, when they go train a bodybuilding workout, they're doing like their rotator cuff exercises for 2 minutes and then they go right into training. That's not the case. It's optimizing movement. It's if you're gonna do something heavy, you're gonna do something fast, you're gonna do a lot of reps, your movement has to be on par or you're gonna get hurt. And so with a games level athlete, you are optimizing your movement, you're optimizing everything in order to maintain and not get hurt, but optimize performance.
Totally. Yeah, you can maybe your workout at a CrossFit gym, if you're just taking a regular class, is like you said, like a 10-minute AMRAP is something that we do, and that stands for as many rounds or reps as possible in 10 minutes. And if you told your friend, like, hey, I went and did a 10-minute workout today, they'd probably laugh at you if they didn't know what exactly it was all about. But it's not just that 10 minutes. You're absolutely right in that there's a lot of time spent in the warm-up process, making sure that your movement is all dialed in, and spending that extra time to get everything kind of prepared and then recovered and just able to handle as much volume as we do.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a good example, because yesterday we were at Training Think Tank, and my videographer Rico, he was doing some filming there, and he asked me, he's like, because I said to him, yeah, they're about to start the workout. He's like, they're about to start the workout. I'm like, yeah, they were priming their bodies to perform at peak, to where they can maximize that 10-minute workout that they were gonna do. And I said, they're getting their heart rate to a certain level to where whenever that workout starts, they're in optimal condition to be able to perform at their best and maximize their performance every single second of that workout. So you see them starting with some mobility, slowly getting their heart rate higher and higher and higher, not moving too much blood at one time, not getting too much of a stimulus in one area, getting their body primed, doing like literally every single moment, going from 60% to 70% to 80% to 90%. So whenever that workout starts, they're at 100% and they're ready to go. And so you might see a 10-minute workout, but like you said, it's so much more than that. And so we don't need to go down the rabbit hole of too much talking about CrossFit. There's so much information, but just know that Noah is going to crush it this year at the games.
That's
and
the plan.
it's super cool to have him on the podcast. So you are a high-level athlete, but how did we get to this point? So one thing I like to do is just give you like 3 to 5 minutes talking about where you were born, what your childhood looked like, what sports you played, everything up until maybe you found CrossFit.
Cool. Yeah, I can totally do that. So I am 26 years old now, so that means I was born in 1991, May 3rd, and that was up in Providence, Rhode Island. We lived there for about 2 years, and then I moved down with my family, my mom and dad, to South Florida. My baby sister was born down there, and I spent probably the next 10 to 12 years in West Palm Beach, and then we kind of moved a little bit further south down to just above the Miami area, and I kind of did middle school, high school, and the end of my college career down there. I spent 1 year up in Clemson, South Carolina, my freshman year, and then transferred back down to the University of Miami. But yeah, that's kind of just the timeline and the, what would you call that, the geographical spread of where I grew up. But sporting wise, since that is kind of my career now as an athlete, I grew up playing a little bit of everything when I was younger, some soccer, some t-ball, some flag football, and then my dad, I'm sure, had been waiting for the moment that I would be able to play lacrosse, because he was a 2-time All-American lacrosse player at Brown University. And I think when I was like 6 to 8 years old is when I started playing lacrosse, until high school when I was about 15. My high school didn't have a team. I had to make the tough decision of whether or not I wanted to continue to pursue lacrosse, possibly for like a collegiate scholarship, maybe professionally, or stay with my friends that I had just kind of finally found the group of and go to the high school that was local. And I chose to kind of move on from lacrosse and find something else. Got into a year of wrestling and then kind of settled into swimming and water polo. And athletically, that was kind of it until I ended up finding CrossFit my sophomore year of college.
And what school did you go to?
So I went to Clemson University in Clemson, South Carolina, my freshman year of college, and then transferred back down to the University of Miami for my sophomore through my master's year down there. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, so that's quite the athletic background. So if you know anything about CrossFit, you know there's a lot of different things going on. You need to be really a well-rounded athlete. And as you can see, Noah had a well-rounded athletic background, playing a bunch of sports, especially like playing water polo. That is like exhausting.
Yeah, it can be for sure.
Absolutely.
But oddly enough, all of those sports are mostly aerobic based, right? You're doing a lot of running or swimming, and there's not much of a strength component to them unless you do some off-season conditioning. So that was one area when I stepped into CrossFit that I was way behind the curve, because I had really not touched a barbell up until that point, and the barbell is such a huge part of what CrossFit is. And yeah, so that definitely took me a while to build that strength up.
Absolutely, and that's just a testament of where he is. So you guys have seen Noah. He's a house now. Like he's a pretty big dude.
I'll take it.
Yeah, he's a pretty big dude, and he you can just tell the work he's put in, and it's cool. Like you see a lot of people in the CrossFit community. They come from a couple like sides of the spectrum. Either they were like pretty elite aerobically, or they were pretty elite with the barbell, and then they eventually find that games level that they need to compete at, to where there's not that one thing that's too much of a weakness. So I want to go back to was there ever, so one thing I'm super fascinated by, and it's something that's helped me out a lot, is when we're growing up or we hit a certain point in our lives, we have a moment where like it seems like our whole life just kind of fell apart. It was like that lowest of low, and then that lowest of low turns into the highest of high, because it forces us to slow down and change our direction, and it gives us a why and gives us a motivation that helps us to find our why in life. And so was there ever a moment that like was that turning point, or when something bad happened in your life that actually was like one of the best things that ever happened to you?
I don't know that there is one monumentous thing that stands out where it was like, wow, that was kind of where everything turned around and everything changed for me. I would say, if anything, when I did transfer from Clemson back down to the University of Miami, I was kind of flying solo. I got an apartment that was off campus because I wasn't a freshman anymore, so I couldn't live on campus, and just had a really hard time kind of making friends, finding my thing. I hadn't found CrossFit yet, and I think when maybe going through that a little bit, kind of being a little lonely, feeling like a little bit of an outcast, to finally find CrossFit and this community. CrossFit's so community-based. I think the fact that I was taken in right away by all these people and made these friends that I could go hang out with every day, and that kind of maybe was what made me jump into that so aggressively, whereas if I was good and had friends and was comfortable, I may not have taken to that quite as quickly.
Absolutely. No, I mean, that's the thing. Like, we all have, it's the mindset, like something that changes our direction. So like more times than not, if everything's going good, we're not going to do anything about it. We're just going to keep coasting.
Yeah, like why fix what's if it's not broken?
Yeah, absolutely. And then it takes that moment of like, oh, well, something could be better, or something didn't go right. And then it puts us in our tracks like, okay, how do we fix this? And it doesn't have to be anything terrible at all. It's just that mindset shift. And like, that's one thing I like to talk about a lot with everybody listening is, don't see anything as perceived bad, but just see it as an opportunity to grow. It's a red flag that allows you to, oh, this is where I could be better. If there was no red flags, then you've already tapped out and you're not going to be any better.
Yeah,
and it's
for sure.
It's just like with any, like a failed lift or anything like that. If you're just crushing everything, then nothing glaring comes up. But I mean, that's great, but like if there's something that you can always be better at, then your ceiling just keeps getting higher and higher and higher.
Yeah.
And one thing that we were talking about before the interview, and I think it's something that can take your ceiling so much higher, is Noah has made it to the games for years. And I mean, how often have you tracked your macros or anything like that?
Man, I would honestly say that probably last year was the only year of the 4 that I was roughly paying attention to. Not paying attention to my nutrition. I've always kind of been aware that I should be eating healthy, but I have not quite optimized my nutrition for performance. I think because it never impacted me that much negatively, I was kind of, like you said, like nothing that crazy had happened, nothing had really gone wrong. So I was like, okay, I can kind of just keep doing what I'm doing, eating the way I'm eating. I've still made it to the games, I did pretty well, but I think there is still, like you said, that ceiling of being able to optimize that factor even more to take it to the next level.
Absolutely. And so the biggest thing, if you guys aren't familiar, so one thing that is was popular, and it's definitely moving away from it, was the paleo movement. And that was big in the CrossFit community. And this term healthy for a performance athlete can actually become very unhealthy. So the biggest thing with a performance athlete is your carbohydrates are your best friend, and you need a good amount of them if you're going to be because CrossFit is anaerobic. That means that glycogen is the main fuel, which is from carbohydrates. And if you are a training athlete and you are under fueled, what's going to happen is you're going to tax out your stress levels are going to be through the roof. You're going to be working out, and cortisol is actually going to be your fuel, and you're going to burn yourself out. And so what I saw with a lot of CrossFit athletes, especially in the beginning, trying to eat paleo while training for the games, they literally destroyed themselves. Yeah. And you can go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's so funny that you say that, because we did get so wrapped up in that back in the day. Like probably 7 years ago when I first took my level 1, and they definitely pitch paleo and zone, and there's nothing wrong with that for the general population, but like you're saying, for a performance high-level athlete that's training anaerobically so many times throughout the day, there really was, we seriously had the mindset. Guido Trinidad owns the gym Peak that I started at, and his wife Virginia is big into nutrition, and I remember us having conversations about how carbs were like the enemy, like carbs were bad, we wanted to stay away from them. Guido would put olive oil on top of his food. We thought fat was what we needed, and just kind of everything had gotten a little bit twisted. And then eventually we realized, hey, we need more of this quick, fast burning energy. We actually do need these carbs, and got things a little bit more back on track.
Absolutely. So like let's I mean, I think this is a good time to kind of go into a little bit of a nutrition lesson. So if you're going to be a performance athlete and you are relying primarily on glycogen, you need to be replenishing, not only for recovery but for performance as well. So carbohydrates are fast, so they can be digested into glycogen, and so if we're doing anaerobic, that means without oxygen, means it's really fast. Mm-hmm. So they need to be they're stored in the muscle as glycogen. Dietary fat cannot be. And so it needs to be broken down in order to be readily available for glycogen, which is a very slow process. So if you are taking in a higher fat diet and you're a performance athlete, you need to, like, a fat gram is 9 calories per gram. A gram of carbohydrates is 4 calories per gram. And so it's twice as much energy for your body to digest. Mm. And thus it makes it so much harder to make available in a short period of time.
For sure. And I know that can even put stress on your gut sometimes, to have to spend extra time and energy processing that, where you want the blood flow and energy to be going toward your muscles, not going in toward the gut to help with that processing.
Absolutely, and that's one way you can definitely maximize your performance. So my biggest thing with a CrossFit athlete is it's not only optimizing your macronutrients, while I'm not neglecting micronutrients. So let's go down this rabbit hole. Is if you're gonna focus on only eating healthy, you're not talking about macros whatsoever. So if you say, let's say this, you're gonna hit your macros, you're gonna hit, what are your let's say Noah's hitting let's say Noah's hitting 500 grams of carbs, 100 grams of fat, and 180 grams of protein. Let's say he's got to train 3 times today, and he's got to try and hit all of his carbs from vegetables, from potatoes, and from rice. How do you think he's going to train? He's going to feel like a log. It's going to be so hard for him to train because he's going to be so full. Yeah. And he's not going to maximize his performance. So my biggest thing is, for a performance athlete, they need to check off boxes. So what that means is they have a certain amount of vitamins and minerals that they need to be taking in on a daily basis while hitting in their macros. So overfilling these needs doesn't make them any better off. So if they get their micronutrients in, so if they're getting in a solid amount, they're having a greens powder, they're sneaking in some spinach, they're sneaking in some vegetables, they're gonna get enough, and then they're gonna get trace micronutrients from the carb sources that they're taking in, from the protein sources, from the fat sources. And sprinkling in some ice cream, sprinkling in foods that are quote unquote not quote healthy for the normal population, the ones that would lead you to be eating in excess, but somebody like him who needs readily available, who's a performance athlete, that is actually very healthy for him because he's giving himself fuel, and the lack of fuel is going to lead to him overly stressed and using cortisol as energy, thus degrading his overall health. So there's a big difference.
It is funny because I had that battle at first when I started to learn about macronutrients and making sure you hit your numbers. And for me, it was like, all right, well, is it better to hit my numbers and eat a candy bar, or is it better to not eat the candy bar and fall under my numbers? And there was a coach that I worked with when I was in the Grid League, which was kind of a little branch off of what CrossFit is. It was like a team style fitness event. And this coach would tell us to like drink a Coke after an event and all this stuff. And to me, that was the complete opposite of what health was. But it started to make sense in terms of energy expenditure and replenishing and recovering. I still think that there are probably better options than that, but it can be better to eat something that's not quote unquote healthy to get those numbers than to not at all.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's yeah, obviously I don't advise somebody drinking a full sugar Coke, but you got to see it as carbohydrates. So if you're drinking a full sugar 20-ounce Coke, you're looking at like 60 to 80 grams of carbs, and most of them are coming from sugar. And that's mainly, you drink a Gatorade, it's the same, your body sees it exactly the same, guys.
Yeah,
and
crazy.
It's just, if it's a liquid, and you're gonna hear this too, if you're drinking orange juice or apple juice, it is exactly the same. The only difference is when your body is digesting it, the orange juice and the apple juice will give you, they'll fill up the micronutrient box a little bit more. That is the only difference. Your body sees it as fast-acting sugars. And so if you would have, let's use this as an example, already checked off the boxes of your micronutrients, having a Coke isn't inherently bad if it aids in your recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't advise you to do that.
Yeah.
That's not what I want you to do.
Sorry, I shouldn't have brought up the Coke thing.
No,
but
you're
yeah.
good. No, but that it just makes sense. So
Totally.
we got to get over that boundary. So I think the biggest thing is what I want to, as the end point to this kind of conversation right here, is a performance athlete has different needs than an everyday person. I believe me and Noah are on two different ends of the spectrum. I am eating to live. Literally, that's what I do. I'm more like you guys. Noah is eating to perform. There's two different, so his food is more fuel. For me, my food is more obviously fuel for my brain, but it's something that is food giving me energy to run my business. It's not something that is, I need to use this in order to truly perform and burn this. I'm using it more for lifestyle.
I'm jealous, by the way, because sometimes eating can become a chore when it's like so many carbs or so much of this and that. I'm not a huge eater, so sometimes I have to make myself get those numbers in, and I kind of envy everybody that can just eat what they need to and not more than that, you know?
Absolutely. So let's kind of, this came to mind. I think this is cool. When you're, so let's think of it this way. So most of you guys have dieted before, and you need to, let's say you get down to, and you have like 150 to 200 grams of carbs in a day. Your food choices, and let's say like 50 grams of fat, your food choices are a lot different than if you were up at 300 grams of carbs and 80 grams of fat. For Noah, it's the same end of the spectrum. If you're eating 500 grams of carbs and 100 grams of fat, your food choices are actually kind of limited, because you have to be careful not eating foods that keep you too full to where you can't actually hit those numbers.
Right.
So when we have to go to extremes, which is if you're performing or you're trying to lose a lot of body fat, those are extremes, ends of the spectrum. Your diet's actually going to mold in the sense, because you need to have food that helps you hit those goals. Mm-hmm. So if I wouldn't advise Noah to eat a salad every single day, I would advise him to sneak in vegetables when he can.
Yeah, in the evening is when we try to get in the most vegetables, because I know I don't have any training for the rest of the day. I have the night to kind of relax and process, and it's okay if I'm a little bit more full. So at night we'll try to get in as many vegetables as possible, and throughout the day, more of what you're about to say.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's completely different. So for me, I love eating a salad once, maybe twice a day, because I'm not, working out is actually something that I just do because of the overall health benefits. It makes me feel good, but I'm an entrepreneur first, then I work out. Noah, on the other hand, works out, and it's a complete end of the spectrum. So it's all about priorities. And so if I was training 3 times a day and I was trying to maximize my performance, I probably wouldn't be eating 1 to 2 salads a day, because I wouldn't feel if. So for example, let's say I'm eating my lunch and I know I'm going to be sitting for 3 hours on my computer, or I'm going to be cooking for 3 hours filming content. That's a lot different than me having to go in the gym, work up to a max clean and jerk, and then hit a 30-minute Metcon, like where I'm just burning like crazy, like a 2-hour workout, just crushing it. Like, that's completely different. It all comes down to your total daily energy expenditure and your goals.
Yeah, that's another component of the macro thing that I've just gotten into recently as well, is the timing of it. So making sure that having the right stuff at the right times, taking the shake right before and the shake right after the workouts, just so my body can kind of soak that all in and use it. Or that's the whole another side of it. Most people think, or I used to just think of macros as these daily numbers that you just by the end of the day have to hit, but it's actually, there's that factor, and there's also like when you need to hit certain ones as well.
Well, you segued perfectly right into what I was going to talk about next. Is the biggest thing for a performance athlete is timing, because of performance and recovery. And timing is not, it's more daily for the lay folk like me and probably like you. But for somebody like Noah, his timing has to be impeccable, because he's trying to maximize not only recovery but also performance. So when we were watching him train yesterday at Training Think Tank, so he got done with his so kind of walk me through that. What time did you eat before he got there around 10 to start warming up. Your workout actually started at what? Like the actual training started like, well, you warmed up and you were getting your body primed, and you started around 11.
Yeah, we might have started like right at 11.
Yeah.
And prior to that, I've still been trying to figure this out a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't wake up super duper early, so I don't have that much time from breakfast to my first training session. And I was doing a moderately sized breakfast, and then between breakfast and training, supposed to have a pre-workout shake that had some carbs and protein in it. And I realized that if I have breakfast at 9 and my training's supposed to start at 10, and then I'm having my shake at like 9:45, I haven't given myself enough time to process my breakfast. So I think what I'm going to try to do, which I did yesterday, was have a big breakfast at like 8:30 is when I ate, and I had a cup of oats with 2 tablespoons of honey, half a cup of blueberries. That in total was about 100 grams of carbs.
Yeah. And
I usually have eggs, but I took the day off from eggs and just had 4 little chicken breakfast sausages. So it was like 30 grams of protein, the 100 grams of carbs from all those sources that went into that little oatmeal. And then we started training at 11. So if I ate that at 8:30, that was a few hours in between there. We did a 10-minute workout, which I know doesn't sound like much, but we spent a while.
Intense.
Yeah, we spent a while warming up. Had some really intense rowing and double under jump roping intervals, which went right into some burpees and handstand walks for the end of that 10-minute window. We had kind of like a rest as needed scenario, which was when I took 3 scoops of X-Works Motion, which is a carb product that I actually helped X-Works, as my supplement sponsor, I helped them develop, because I knew that was going to be such an important component.
So how many grams of carbs was in 3 scoops?
So each scoop of that has 25 grams of carbs, has, I don't know exactly how many grams, I think it has about 5 grams of BCAAs and some electrolytes in there. So it's kind of like a 3-in-1 thing. Super delicious. That was, for me, that was very important. I know when I finished working out, especially when I was down in Miami, it's so hot. I just want like a cool, fruity, refreshing drink to drink in between my sessions. I don't want like a chocolate, peanut butter heavy thing.
For his his breakfast, and that's the biggest thing with the performance athlete. You need to figure out, yes, you're checking off the box of macros, but how does it digest and how do you feel? And so with Noah, I would want him, if you're just trying to maximize his performance, I wouldn't be opposed to, he's not looking at food as like this thing that, oh my gosh, it's like, oh, so good and everything. It's like, he's looking like, okay, is this going to fuel my actual workout? And yeah, as a byproduct, does it taste good?
On the weekends, the taste is very important.
Very important. So, but the biggest thing is, okay, does he perform well? But then his shake in between, I would never tell any of you, unless you are a high-level athlete, or you're taking in 500, 400, 500 grams of carbs a day, and you are not hungry at all, to be taking in 75 grams of carbs in between exercises or drinking 75 grams of carbs at any point during your day.
Yeah.
And that, as you can see, it's a lot different. So if you're somebody who is dieting and you only have 150 to 200 grams of carbs, drinking 75 grams of your carbs,
yeah, half right away.
That's
like
not,
that.
and it's not going to make you feel full or anything like that. That's the complete opposite. So for somebody like him, if he's about to go right into another workout, he doesn't want to feel full. He doesn't want to feel like he just ate or drank 75 grams of carbs.
Right.
And so that's the different end of the spectrum. So that's kind of like what I'm really hammering on here is food is plays many different roles. And the higher you are in one extreme, it's a lot different than if you are on a lower end of the extreme. So what does it look like after you get done with your training session?
So I think we ended up training for another hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, and I went home and I think I actually ended up having another shake yesterday. I still have to get everything like super dialed in. I'm figuring it out now since I'm getting back into it, but I would usually probably do a shake after each training session. So another maybe 50 grams of carbs just because I had done another 2 hours of work.
And guys, that's replenishing glycogen. So because glycogen is stored in the actual muscle. And for it to be readily available to fuel his performance, he has to be recovering. The biggest thing is they're doing so much training volume. You trained for how long yesterday?
I would say a cumulative, like, I was probably at the gym for, what time did I leave? 2, from 10 to 2. So 4 hours in there.
And that's mostly non-stop movement, whether it's doing mobility.
Right.
Or
that's what I was going to say. There was only like the 10-minute workout, the few lifts in here and there, but there's a lot of warm-up time. I would say I was probably, honestly, moving for 2.5 hours, like, non-stop throughout that window of 4 hours being at the gym.
Yep. And so for him to optimize recovery, and we know that your sensitivity right after your workout to uptake those into your muscles is so much better post-workout. So him doing that right away is going to ensure that his next training session, he's ready to go. And so what did that look like after? What was your next meal?
So I came home and what did we do yesterday, babe? I can't even remember my short-term memory. We did, yeah, we walked around. So we actually, like, talking about the life balance. It was Saturday. I had gotten my training done. I was done for the weekend technically, and Joanne had been at home just hanging out, getting some work done. And I said, let's get out of here. Let's go do something fun. So we went to an area over here, downtown Roswell. Lots of outdoor little shops and restaurants and people hanging out, walking around. So we went to a little sandwich shop. I got a sandwich, which I kind of knew roughly what was going to be in it. It had probably like 4 grams of chicken. It was 2 pieces of bread, a couple pieces of bacon in there, and
4 ounces of chicken, guys. 4 grams of chicken would have been very, very small.
Yeah.
But I said it kind of
because
they all know it very, very well.
Yeah, so. For sure. And then we had a cookie afterwards, and I kind of kept track of all of that. And by the time we were done walking around there, I would consider that my lunch. I was about, from my goals, which you were pretty close to earlier, of like 450 grams of carbs, almost 200 grams of protein, and 100 of fat. I had still left over for dinner about just over 100 grams of carbs that I needed to get in, about 50 grams of protein and 30 grams of fat. And we had planned a group dinner with some of our friends to go to a barbecue place. And so I kind of went in knowing that was what I needed to get and ordered based on that. I know that some of the pulled pork probably has a good amount of protein, good amount of fat in there, so I could probably close that gap, and just had to get a couple extra sides of like mashed sweet potato to make up that 100 gram carb window, which sweet potato is usually not going to do unless you have a ton of it. So I did have, for the first time in a while, a little bit of ice cream when we got home to just push myself over that 450 gram mark.
Absolutely. So priorities, it's recovery, recovery, recovery. So you can see the 80-20 rule is in play. So most of his food was from high quality sources. He got a lot of vitamins and minerals from his sweet potatoes and his breakfast as well. So it's finding that balance, guys. And as you can see, there wasn't a lot of vegetables there because he's got to fuel his performance. It's got to sit very, very well. So for somebody, let's say somebody is a CrossFitter listening and they want to be competitive, or oh, actually no, let's go here. So you talked about on the weekends, like you love when food tastes good. Let's talk about what are your favorite foods?
Oh man, we definitely are brunch people. I know that's very cliche and trendy to say nowadays. Everybody loves brunch, but we love going out and getting a good breakfast, and that could look like I don't know, a big omelet, some house potatoes, maybe here and there like a waffle or a pancake. We don't have the special recipes like you've got for those, so we'll get some of those tonight, but definitely something like there. Maybe a little fancy schmancy coffee drink with some milk and sugar in it. And then for lunch, yeah, I mean, I don't know, nothing in particular. I would say more so we'll always try to find, at least once per weekend, find a good spot where we can go get dinner. Really any style, but just a good high quality restaurant, somewhere that's not like a fast food joint or like I don't know, something that's a little bit fancy but not too crazy, and just get a good meal where you know it's like kind of indulgent but not over the top where you leave feeling disgusting and like Sunday's ruined because you don't feel good the rest of the day, you know?
Absolutely, absolutely. So that brings up something cool. So we're talking about macros, and so when you eat at a place that, like, quote unquote isn't as higher class as another restaurant, so let's just say we're eating at like a McDonald's or like a Wendy's or somebody like that.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been for me too.
Yeah.
So whenever you go to a place like this, because their profit margins, they're charged so low for things, they're going to use lower quality or not as lean sources of products or meats or anything like that. So what's going to happen is, why you really feel like death after you eat a lot of it is because you've consumed an ungodly amount of calories. Because when you use not as lean of a source as meat, like, it's just like if you go to the grocery store and you go get 75-25 lean ground beef versus you getting a 96.4 lean ground beef. The difference is the 75-25 is mainly, most of the calories are coming from fat. I think 75-25 has like 28 grams of fat to like 15 grams of protein per 4 ounces, guys.
Yeah, that's heavy.
That's heavy. So your body, remember, 9 calories per gram. You're having to digest 28 grams of fat from 4, and you're probably getting more than 4 ounces. But 96.4 has 3.5 grams of fat and 22 grams of protein. So as you can see, it's a lot. It literally has the macronutrient profile as chicken. And so that's one thing you got to think about too, is if you go out and eat at one of these places, the chances of you getting a higher quality, leaner source of meat at a nicer place is that much higher, thus you will not feel as deathly. Because digesting, it's just like we were talking about earlier, as a performance athlete, having a influx of high amounts of dietary fat is not bad, but having a high amount of it is going to make you feel like a brick, because your body is having to literally break down bricks and bricks and bricks of calories, and it's very, very taxing on your body.
Yeah, it slows you down, makes you feel sluggish because all the energy is going toward that process.
Yeah, so it's correlation, not causation. So that's one thing I want you guys to take away from a lot of this. So I want to hear this from you, Noah. What is your definition of healthy?
Man, I think it's changed a lot over the years, right? Because it went from just general, like as a kid, I know my parents did a really good job of making sure that we had healthy, at least something for breakfast. My meals at school were always like, I was just talking to somebody today about how I could have a Lunchable like once every 6 months, like twice a year. I was allowed the privilege of getting a Lunchable. And,
best day ever.
Yeah, but it was usually my mom would make like a turkey sandwich or a peanut butter sandwich or something like that with the carrot sticks, and then our dinner was always what it is now for me, actually. Usually like a grain, some type of carb source, some type of protein source, and some vegetables, and a glass of milk. That was always a key component to our dinners as a kid. And obviously that kind of changed when I got to high school. I would kind of eat whatever, we would all go out late and get fast food when we were coming home from a party or whatever. But when I got into college, I started getting more into the health side of things, and like drinking green tea and realizing what antioxidants can do for you, and trying to lose a little bit of fat and look a little leaner, which then transitioned more from aesthetics to the performance and athletics, and realizing that food can be used as a source to perform and move. So I would say now, my diet, probably like you mentioned, is not the general definition of healthy. For most people, it probably is not the healthiest diet because there are so many carbs and the calories are very, very high. But
that's going to be the big thing. So I just want to chime in really quickly. So for some people, they might think if you're not very active, you do not live, you're not burning a lot, you don't do high intensity exercise, you eating a lot of rice is counterintuitive to what your demands are on your life. So for example, eating this, like literally I'm showing with my hands, a cupped handful is going to take away about 40 grams of your carbs for the day, and literally I can just throw it up and eat it in my mouth and it's gone. And for you, that would take up so much of your carbs for the day, and you didn't do anything besides living. You don't need a lot of carbs to live, but you need a lot of carbs to perform if you're a performance athlete. So healthy for him is going to be a lot different than healthy for somebody who is just living, who doesn't have that high energy expenditure. So we might quote unquote think healthy rice is healthy, but based on the macronutrients, it might not be the best choice for somebody who, if they want to maintain caloric balance, aka hitting their macros, and lose actual body fat by adhering to those macros. And that's going to be the biggest thing, is if you want to earn more carbohydrates, you got to do more activities that actually burn carbohydrates. And that's why Noah is taking in 450 grams of carbs a day, and it'll probably go up higher because he's earning those every single day because he needs them. Not because he really, really wants them. He could eat a lot less. He actually needs them. So that's something I wanted to kind of chime in on, and you can kind of...
Yeah, no, totally. I think that's very true, and it's funny, the word healthy too, to many people means many different things. I know my coach, Max El Haj, has a battle in his head all the time on what healthy means to the general population, to the sports specific population. And I think that even outside of dietary, like my lifestyle is probably not quote unquote healthy for most people, to be in the gym for 4 or 5 hours a day, to be putting my body under a lot of stress with the weightlifting and like having sore joints sometimes and sore muscles. Like that's maybe not healthy for everybody, but it's for a specific goal for me. And eventually, as it has throughout my life, that is going to transition, and my definition of healthy when I'm not competing is going to look different. My exercise level is going to go way down, right? I'm not going to train as much. So the healthy level now that makes sense for me is 4 or 5 hours a day. So eventually it'll be maybe 1 hour a day, and my calories and macros and all that will be a lot less. So healthy is kind of always changing for me.
Absolutely. That's a very, very, very valid point. It's always evolving. That's 100%. I guarantee if I ask you what healthy is next year for you or for me or for Noah, I think it's going to be a different answer. Nutrition is evolving. It's something that we still need to learn so much about, and we're still going to learn so much about. But the biggest thing is, I want you guys to take away that healthy is super relative, but just know that your body has needs. It has needs. It has its vitamins and minerals it needs. has a certain amount of protein it needs to build and maintain. It needs a certain amount of carbs in order to perform and live. And it needs a certain amount of fat in order to maximize your hormonal production and overall health and uptake of vitamins and minerals, because fats are a transporter. So once you hit those needs, it becomes like less of a thing of, oh, is something healthy or not? Because once you have your needs, science has showed you spilling over those needs doesn't really do much for you. But this is the thing, if spilling over causes you less stress because there's not anything to worry about, then that's better. But if you being a 100% instead of 80-20 causes you even more stress, I think of you being 80-20 instead of 100% is going to be a lot better, because stress is in reality what's actually killing us. And whether that's stress from your girlfriend, that's stress from your workouts, that's stress from life, everything. I didn't mean to shot. That was not a shot. That was not shots fired.
No, not at all. Very little stress from that one over there.
Absolutely. So I just want, stress is all the same. And our body's trying to evolve from stress, but too much stress, you spilling over, whether that be stressing about your food or stressing about anything else in life, that's what's going to be the big thing.
I agree, and that's something that has kind of been a factor in my nutrition, is that because I have never been so high strung about making sure I hit certain numbers and when I have to do it, I just feel like because I would rather focus a majority of my energy on my training and performing and recovering, and what I have left over be able to put into my nutrition. That may sound not awesome in your book, because I knew it's probably the opposite. You're like nutrition focused, training kind of goes along with that. But for me, I feel like if I had a lot of stress from the gym put on my body, and then I came home and stressed even more about, oh my gosh, I didn't hit this number and I have to eat this, like that could just be overwhelming. So I try again to balance, making sure both.
I'm in 100% agreement. Like I would love you to obviously hit your macros in the most less stressful way as possible. So you being able to find foods that are less stressful for you, in the sense of like, okay, I know I have this, I have this, I have this. And so not waiting until close to the games and making it so easy in your mind that you don't have to really worry about it is one of those things. Because as you get closer, it gets more and more stressful.
For sure.
But it's just like, it's being able to, and that's the cool thing. Him learning this now is, once CrossFit's over, when nutrition is a lot more important, because if you're not burning as much and you want to maintain a healthy, that's what happens when a lot of people, they play high school or college sports.
Used to eating a certain way.
Used to eating a certain way, and then they stop the energy expenditure. Thus, they're not burning as many calories, but they're eating the same amount. What happens? They gain weight. And that's the biggest thing for a lot of people, is if you don't understand the role your nutrition plays in energy balance, then once that energy output is gone and the energy input is still the same, you're going to gain weight. And that's something that I think Noah will be perfectly fine with once it's done. And I want to touch on one more point before we wrap things up, because we are about 10 minutes from the hour mark. Me and Noah were talking about before the podcast body fat set points. So whenever he was last year going into the games, his coach wanted him to gain about 10 pounds. Yeah,
I would say from December to July, I had gone from about 185 up to very close to 200.
Okay, so you competed at like 195?
Yep, I was probably around that, so 10 pounds up from what I usually was.
Okay, so Noah competed at 195. He felt a little bit heavier on the aerobic components.
Yeah, from running and swimming and stuff like that.
And so after the games, he didn't track macros anymore and took a break. And all he wanted to do was just get back down to 185. And so kind of talk about that process of how quickly that actually happened without even tracking macros.
For sure. I feel like some people will probably get mad at me because it was that easy. And I know it's not that easy for everybody, for sure. But post games, we decided, hey, that was a little bit too heavy for me as a fighting weight. So going from that 195 back down to 185, simply by cutting out the extra carb shakes between the workouts, or maybe still having it but just not quite as dense. Like instead of doing 3 scoops with 75 grams in total, I would just do 1 scoop, 25 grams. So I was still recovering but just not as heavily, and taking out the extras that I was eating before, like the peanut butter sandwich here, or the bowl of cereal there, or like a little bit of the ice cream that I needed before the games to maintain that weight of the 195. I just kind of slowly pulled those things out. My coach wanted me to, he said slowly, he said in the next few months, let's get you back down to 185 as low stress as possible. So I started taking those things out, and in about 2.5 to 3 weeks, I was down to like 182. I was like, wow, that happened very fast. I just lost 15 pounds in like 2 weeks, and I felt fine. I didn't feel undernourished. I didn't feel like anything crazy had happened. My body just kind of got there the way it wanted to.
Absolutely. So that's a funny point. So we all have this body fat set point. We have this fighting weight that our body wants to be at. And so Noah's not like him getting to 195 was forcing his body to do that. You were not hungry. You were forcing food in order to be. You
had to like plug my nose and eat my food sometimes because I was just stuffed.
Yeah, and so him going back down to 182 was easy for his body. It was actually like his body being able to exhale, like, oh my gosh, not as much food. Awesome, because his body wants to be at that weight. And so what's going to happen is we have our hormones, our hunger hormones called ghrelin and leptin. And what's going to happen is they work simultaneously to help our body understand when we're hungry and when we're full. And his body was just fighting, he was fighting his ghrelin and leptin for the longest time, trying to gain weight. And the moment he didn't have to track and hit these numbers and force himself to, his ghrelin and leptin were like, hey, like, let's not eat as much and let's lose this weight. And in reality, his ghrelin and leptin wanted him to get back very, very soon. And so because he overfed for so long, his body just didn't want that much food anymore. And he lost, what, like 12 pounds? No.
13, yeah.
13 pounds in like less than 3 weeks because his body was craving to be at that weight. So we all have this. We notice that we can gain some body fat, but getting past a certain point and forcing body fat takes a lot more calories. Same thing with losing some body fat as well. And that was just a cool point I wanted to highlight, because our body is just constantly fighting. We want to fluctuate between, you'll notice like a lot of people, if you stop tracking, you can fluctuate between 5 pounds up or down, but you're not going to be going, and you got to force yourself to go a lot higher. You have to make some big changes to go higher or lower than that. Mm-hmm. And that's good to be mindful of that. So I hope you guys are enjoying the podcast so far. We're actually going to lead into the final question right now, and I'm super excited to ask you this.
I'm nervous and excited.
But before we do, I want to thank Noah. Seriously, this was a really, really cool podcast. I believe we got very tactical with a lot of things, and there's going to be a ton of value here. So let's lead into the last question. So I got to set the stage. So today is your funeral. There are thousands of people there to mourn the loss but celebrate your life. There is actually one person on stage about to give your eulogy. You have no clue if they just followed you on Instagram, they saw you at the games one time, you maybe met them 5 times, or you knew them your whole life. If they're giving that eulogy today, what kind of life would you have wanted to live to where they would, what would they say about your life?
Man, that is a powerful question for sure. Ironically, though, it is something, maybe not in the same exact context, but something that I have been thinking about a little bit more lately, and I think that's kind of my legacy and what I want to not necessarily leave behind, because I want to be able to have this impact now and forever. And I have kind of realized that for whatever reason, I tend to carry a lot of positivity, and I didn't really know it myself. I've had other people kind of tell me like, hey, how are you always so happy and upbeat, and how do you have so much energy? And I think that is something that I want to be able to just have people say that I was a good dude, that I made them happy and was kind to them, and to be able to kind of shine some light. will be honest, I didn't grow up as a churchgoer, but I have some really close friends of mine that have brought me along to a few of their services, and one of them that really, really stuck with me was this guy down in Miami, Rich Wilkerson Jr., who gave a sermon, and kind of the end of it wrapped up by talking about how when sometimes every now and then if you're at a party or something and there's that one person that everybody's talking about and you say like that person just had an aura about them, right? And he likened that to being their light that they have inside of them kind of coming out. And I just want to be able to take as much of the light that's inside of me to shine out toward people and light them up.
That's awesome. That's really, really cool, because anybody who is listening to this podcast, they know that I talk about this all the time. It's like I got goosebumps like talking about it, because that's something and it's a good reminder. I wanted to talk about this on the podcast. Is positivity is everything, guys. Like if you want to change your world, change your attitude. See the world as a beautiful place, and I guarantee you're going to attract beautiful people around you. But if you complain and you're the victim all the time, you're going to attract people who want to complain and be the victim as well. And it's amazing in a world today where we have so much perceived bad. We need more leaders. We need more people spreading positivity. And it's as simple as and you talking about, like my dad used to always tell me, he's like, when you're checking out at the grocery store, make a conversation with the person checking you out.
Yeah.
You have no idea where they are in their lives. You have no idea what the stresses that they have, but you don't know if you make them smile, and then the next person in line, you don't know where that person was, and then they make somebody smile.
That's a good point.
And you never know. It's just empathy. You never know where somebody is in their lives. You have no idea all the things that happened to them up until that point that maybe they took it out on you. It's never about us. It's never about us, ever. And if we can just make sure that we are positive in any situation, and we try and bring the most positivity or deploy the most empathy and just be a good person, we will bring the best out of everybody else around us, and then we will attract more amazing people, and thus by just over time, that's where thousands and thousands of people come to your actual funeral.
That's cool. And it can be so simple too, because like Joanna's been really, really awesome lately. I've been noticing, I don't know where it came from, but every time we pass somebody, whether we're taking Max for a walk or going to the park or coming in and out of the grocery store, she'll say hi to everybody. Even if they're looking down, she just says hello and smiles, and it's really cool because it makes me smile. And sometimes we'll get people that like scowl and look away, and sometimes we'll get people that just like brighten up and like give you this huge smile that makes you smile even more. And so yeah, anyways, even if you feel like it's overwhelming to want to give off this positivity and like, I don't know how to do that, I don't know if I can do that, it's so simple. Like, just be kind and be nice and say hi and smile.
Smile. When in doubt, smile more. It's an easy recipe for living a good life and surrounding yourself with amazing people. So, as you can see, like, this is cool. This was super cool, and I want to thank Noah for having us here. This was really, really cool. I mean, positivity is everything. And to see how much he has grown over the last 4 years, not only in CrossFit as a person, and I'm a huge fan, and this is a super cool experience for me. So I just want to
appreciate you, my brother.
Got you. So he's gonna crush it this year, and I want to make sure everything. If you're watching this on YouTube, all of his information will be linked below. So you guys should make sure to go check out Noah. And I promise you guys will not be let down whatsoever. So much positive vibes coming your way, and I'm so excited. I'm so excited for you guys to listen to this and get feedback from this. So thank you again, Noah. Thank you guys for watching, listening, and we'll catch you guys in the next episode. And as always, thank you. God bless.